Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, commonly known as BJJ, has become a cornerstone of mixed martial arts training, providing fighters with incredibly essential grappling skills necessary to compete at the highest level. From Royce Gracie's early dominance in the UFC to Khabib Nurmagomedov's unbeaten reign, BJJ has been a vital component in the success of many MMA fighters.
Don't let him breathe, Walt. Don't let him breathe.
But what if BJJ was suddenly banned in the UFC? How would fighters adapt their game plans? And what impact would it have on the sport as a whole? Let's have a look at both cases through two shining examples, in this case, Charles "The Bronx" Oliveira and Conor McGregor. Charles Oliveira's fighting style in the UFC is undoubtedly one of the most exciting to watch. As a third-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he is a true master of the art and had the most submissions in the UFC as of his win against Justin Gaethje in May 2022.
Justin's in a lot of trouble here. Oh, he's got a triangle too. You can't let him take his back. Got the choke. It's over.
Oliveira's under the chin.
Oh my God.
That is gonna do it.
This dude right here, man.
Charles Oliveira.
But what truly makes him stand out from other BJJ practitioners is his ability to adapt his ground game to MMA. Oliveira cancels out the ineffective techniques and focuses on top positions and takedowns, making his BJJ very effective in the octagon.
Oliveira's counter takedown game is one of his best assets. It's not often that we see Tony Ferguson get taken down, but his tendency to throw himself forward and out of position has led to the majority of his takedowns given up in recent years.
In MMA, the importance of being well-rounded as a fighter cannot be overstated, and Oliveira is no slouch when it comes to striking either. His aggressive kickboxing style utilizes a lot of forward pressure, and he has dropped some of the biggest names in the sport with his strikes. But what sets him apart is his ability to take the fight to the ground whenever he needs to. Most fighters who drop their opponents in the octagon like to follow up with ground and pound shots. But that's the perfect bait for Oliveira to get his opponents to engage in grappling.
Opens himself up for a single leg though.
Kevin gets on top. Watch this, watch those ankles.
However, while BJJ has produced some of the greatest UFC champions, it's not enough on its own in the octagon. Techniques such as berimbolos, worm guard, and 50-50
We're now 50-50 guards. A common problem with 50-50 guard, when we secure the heel and we try to finish square here, is simply reach me very easily with his hands there. When he grabs my head, the ability to use my hips on a heel hook to do any sort of meaningful breaking damage.
may be exciting to watch in BJJ tournaments, but they have very little applicability in MMA. In addition, the average standards of takedowns in BJJ are poor, and the best BJJ fighters struggle to take down skilled wrestlers and use their ground skills. Despite its limitations, BJJ is an essential martial art in MMA, and it's hard to imagine the sport without it. But if it were suddenly not allowed in the UFC, fighters like Charles Oliveira, who heavily rely on it, would suffer. That being said, Oliveira is not limited to just his ground game and has developed into a well-rounded fighter. Oliveira's adaptation of his BJJ skills to MMA is what makes him such a dangerous fighter, so fighters now are beginning to realize that a combination of skills is necessary to succeed in the UFC, not just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. In the world of UFC fights, a submission victory is a coveted accomplishment that accounts for only about 25% of wins. With limited 3 5-minute rounds, a fighter's opportunity to work for a submission is brief, leaving just a short window to work their magic. Although takedowns are important, they take an average of 2 minutes to execute, which can leave just 3 minutes to go for the submission. This is why cross-training is crucial for serious MMA fighters, and allocating time to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a must. However, a good wrestler could, in our hypothetical scenario, benefit more from developing their striking ability to win standing fights instead of focusing solely on winning on the ground, because they would be much less likely to get taken down. Here, each skill set plays into the other. BJJ techniques seen in IBJJF or EBI matches may not work effectively in MMA, so striking skills are essentially for success. Before we continue with the video, be sure to subscribe and comment, I subbed to enter in our monthly shoutout giveaway. And now, let's get back into it. The legend, Conor McGregor. A style that could work in an MMA world without BJJ would be one that, well, isn't so reliant on BJJ in the first place. Take Conor McGregor for example. When Conor McGregor first burst onto the scene, he quickly made a name for himself, not only for his impressive trash-talking skills and custom-made suits, but also for his unique fighting style. McGregor's karate-inspired stance was not the norm, especially for a fighter that prioritizes his boxing skills above anything else. However, his wide stance and lethal left hand proved to be highly effective and made him one of the flashiest strikers in the game. McGregor's fighting style relied less on his point karate-influenced stance and ability to smoothly navigate distance as he moved up in weight. He instead opted for an almost exclusively boxing-centric stance at 155 and 170 pounds. With the emphasis on his fight-ending left, McGregor planted his feet and sat into his punches, replacing hopping in and out of range in search for that perfect counter. One of the greatest weapons in UFC history, McGregor's ability to sleep opponents with his Celtic cross made him a super dangerous guy on the feet. The likes of Marcus Brimage, Diego Brando, Dustin Poirier, and Jose Aldo were all blown away by the speed and accuracy of his left, which esteemed tri-star coach Firas Zahabi once touted as the touch of death. McGregor's left hook is also a lethal punch when applied correctly. Although his amateur boxing experience has been widely exaggerated over the years, the basics of both his left cross and lead hook would have been learned inside the confines of Crumlin Boxing Gym.
I have to say, it's a bit of an honor for me to be in the place that started it all.
He has that with fine art. He's the Muhammad Ali of the UFC.
Both techniques have been carefully honed over the years, with his hook in particular having more karate DNA to it than meets the eye. McGregor's style was highly dependent on his ability to navigate his opponent's attack prowess, so it's no surprise that his defensive frailties coincide with a general decline in his effectiveness. However, the absence of BJJ in the UFC would not necessarily affect McGregor's style, since he relies heavily on his striking skills and does not typically use BJJ techniques in his fights. In fact, McGregor's striking ability are so formidable that they have carried him to the top of the UFC, even against opponents with superior grappling skills. While he may not be a master of BJJ, McGregor's striking prowess more than makes up for any potential weaknesses in his ground game. McGregor's success in the UFC has been built on his ability to knock opponents out with his devastating left hand, so any fighter that is well-rounded enough to be able to adapt to different situations will likely continue to succeed in the UFC, even if they were unable to use something as potent as BJJ. So what do you think? Agree or disagree with our assessment? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more BJJ content. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.